Please welcome Barbara and our panelists, Meredith Ow, Alexander Harris, and ELIZA LOEHR.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. And with everything that's going on right now and all the commotion that's going on, there are challenges and there are opportunities. And I'm going to focus on the opportunities and bring to you my dream team panel of people doing amazing work in the forefront of bringing together employees that are from underserved members of the community to great employers who have vision for really sound work practices and work culture. And when we do this today, I'm going to first introduce the group, and then they're going to have a series of questions that I'll be asking them. And I think that I see them now, so I'm going to give them all a wave. Hello, hello. And just as Dean Walsh said this morning that HEC 95 is dare to do, these folks that I'm going to introduce you to, these are the people that are really doing what we all think can be a great new path for hospitality, because our industry is a unique industry where people can go in low level and there's upward mobility. And when the employer is one that believes in that upward mobility and believes in sustainable wages and benefits, people thrive. And with that, I'm going to start. We are going to have our 45 minutes, so this will not be a half hour. I'm allowed to take our time. So the first person I'm going to introduce is going to be, and I'll just look right here, is ELIZA LOEHR. And ELIZA is with the Education Food Fund, excuse me. She is with the Food Education Fund. And this organization, which she'll explain, is where she's always wanted to be. She had envisioned a high school that allowed for careers in hospitality, and then she found the Food and Finance High School in New York City, which actually Cornell is involved with. And she started to volunteer. Then she shifted to another great organization. These are called CBOs, or community-based organizations. And she went to CCAP. And from CCAP, she then went back to the Education Fund and now leads a dynamic initiative, and just recently had a fundraiser where they raised $422,000. So congratulations to ELIZA. We then have Alexander Harris. Alex is the culinary director at Emma's Torch. And Emma's Torch is a social enterprise and a training ground for refugees, empowering them with opportunities in hospitality. Alex actually came from the pharmaceutical industry, but food always called him back. And he then went to culinary school, worked at some of the best restaurants in Philadelphia, same thing in New York City, and then really found his path with Emma's Torch by leading and training the individuals that are the participants there in culinary education and in placement. I hope I'm getting this all right to all of our panelists. And last, but certainly not least, is Meredith Ow. And I should say that I've met all these people at different events, because for me, it is my purpose to see how I can be useful, and Cornell being enormously useful in the initiatives that we're going to talk about. Meredith actually started her career in social work. And she started as a $9 an hour line cook in one of the Union Hospitality Group's restaurants. And then she also went to culinary school. And she now, through years of committed support of having employees get upward mobility, she's now the area director of Shake Shack in New York City. And I have to say that work that I've done in East Harlem, I would take the young adults to Shake Shack, and I have to tell you that Shake Shack and the people that work there blew their minds. And the reason I know all these people is that Cornell now is involved in roundtables that are done in major cities in bringing together these amazing community-based organizations with the employers to see what are the best practices so that it's a win-win-win. A win for the employee, a win for the employer, and a win for the CBOs, because this is their commitment. And with that, you're going to find that some of these questions that I asked, the participants have already been primed. And the first one that I want to be able to talk about, and I'm going to have, I think, ELIZA kick it off. And that is an overview of just introducing yourselves, saying it is, what is that you do, and why you do what you do. So ELIZA, would you please kick it off? indication we're not quite getting sound. Well, as we're waiting for sound, let me tell you about these roundtables, because all of the people on the panel, and the one individual who could not join us, which was Kim DePola or Jordan Lexton from Drive Change, they all have been invited and participate in roundtables when the last one we did was in Philadelphia. And that Heather Kolakowski, who is an advisor for HEC 95, she's one of the faculty members that facilitates the conversation, along with Aaron Aldalji, and then Alex Suskin, which is the, and I always get this name wrong, not Alex's name wrong. He's the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs at the Hotel School, and he and I co-chair these. We have sound yet? Not quite yet. I'm quite good at charades, so we can maybe do that as well. But at these roundtables, the CBOs talk about the things that they provide. And I want to remind everybody that these are not charities. These are training workforce organizations that take people. It could be with Drive Change, it's youth that have been involved with the social justice system. You're going to find that with Emma's Torch, I already talked about the refugees. With Food and Finance High School and another high school, they're for young adults who may have been from a socioeconomic background that doesn't always offer them opportunities as much as they have for here at Cornell. And then they provide, again, all of them provide enormous access to the workforce. And not only do they provide training, but they also provide life skills, so that the individuals who are from the organizations, when they're put into the workforce, they're not just dropped off at a job, but rather there's a collaboration between the CBO and the employer. How are we doing on sound? Not yet. So the phone system where the panelists are connected, it seems is not connected. I would have done that in charades so that no one else would know that, but nonetheless. So maybe if somebody on their end can help. They're all staring at the phone now, wondering what that is. It's almost like clapping twice to make sure lights go on. That's an age thing, never mind. Well, other things that I will talk about is that from these roundtables.
Oh, microphone on? Hey, hello?
You're here. I'm going to be quiet.
Did you do that? Or did you do that?
Can
you hear us?
Head off and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hello. My name is ELIZA. I'm the Executive Director of the Food Education Fund. So we are the 501c3 nonprofit that supports the students of Food and Finance High School. And next year we'll be expanding to the High School of Hospitality Management as well. So my background originally is in culinary school. I went to cooking school when I was 19 and have been working in restaurants until I was for about 6 years. As I was working in restaurants 5 days a week, the other 2 days a week, I was volunteering at different nonprofits. And one of the things that I did was work as an intern at Heritage Radio Network. That allowed me to start speaking to people all over the city about the food industry, start to learn about the education system, and start to learn some of the challenges we had in the city in terms of diversity at the throughout the industry in terms of the different tiers, and also how challenging it can be in various industries to break in if you don't come from a privileged background. So I was teaching 3rd to 5th graders how to cook. We had a focus on fighting obesity, which I think is very important, but I felt a little bit uncomfortable with the way that was happening, just because I felt like the students were kind of turning against their families or their communities, and not quite understanding the full message. So I started to really think about what is important to me about the culinary industry, because I knew that I loved it, I knew that I cared about it, and I realized that what I loved was the fact that anybody can walk in the door regardless of their privilege. And actually I think privilege can mean that you have to work even harder to prove it. And if you show up on time and if you work hard, you can really work your way up. And I was learning about the public high schools in New York and all of these amazing themed high schools. So I started telling people that I wanted to start a culinary public high school with an internship program. And I was also learning about aquaponics. So I also said, and an aquaponics system. And I was telling that to enough people that finally somebody stopped me and said, that exists. That's Food and Finance High School. And that was actually somebody at the Harbor School that said that. So on my ferry ride home, I reached out through the website and I said, how can I help? I can cook, I can help with events, I'm learning graphic design. And our board chair, Nan Shipley, called me about 3 minutes later and said, like, great, can you come help with this event? Can you come cook with the kids? Can you work on this with us? And this was 2014. So I
One
very
more
quickly.
minute, Eliza, just so we can.
Sure.
One more minute. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance and then we go into the meat of the questions.
Sure, go for it. Oh, 1 more minute for me,
Carry
okay.
on.
So Food Education Fund, what we do internship programs with the students where they have paid internships in restaurants and food service industries. We also run a student-run cafe called School Grounds Cafe. We have a dining lab, which is like a restaurant open to the public. And we do tons of other career development programs so that students not only are able to make the connections to places like Shake Shack and our other employers, but also are able to navigate the industry and be able to kind of ask for raises, be able to understand the challenges and have the tools to navigate them.
Super, thank you. I warned the panelists that I would sometimes move a little bit. So my
great.
apologies for doing that right off. Alex, would you please also introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Alexander Harris, culinary director of Emma's Torch, like Barbara said. And so my path into cooking, was a non-traditional one in that it started with a more traditional education. I went to school in a field, engineering, that was based in problem solving. And going through some of the programs that I went through, there were a lot of things that were given to me and a lot of people that helped in that learning process. And then when changing over into the culinary industry, I really wanted to go about things, first and foremost, jump in with both feet, so totally left the other industry and kind of go about things in the same educational way that I did when I was in my former career. And so going through, those few years of being a cook and then being fortunate to work with some really great people and get an opportunity to be a chef, continuing to kind of give little pieces of, what I had learned back as I continued through my process as a young chef. And then moving to the city and continuing to do the same until I was in an upper level chef position, ultimately feeling like after all of those years of education and 2 different careers, it was kind of my time and my opportunity to give back to out of respect to all those people that gave a lot to me. And so I was really very fortunate to make some good friends at my last job. And those friends kind of introduced me to the founder of Emma's Torch at the best possible time at the beginning stages of the first pop-up. I volunteered there and a few minutes in knew that was really going to be the place for me, and then just did my all during that time to kind of really give all of those little bits of industry information and just other education that I could to those students that were in the program at the time. Then once coming on full time, really working on developing a curriculum in culinary that's really going to challenge our students, but at the same time, make them feel, set them up for success and make them feel like all of this foreign stuff that's being thrown at them is doable. Make them understand that I have been through this process as well. And I know and have 100% faith in the fact that they will become all of the things that they are ready to become as they move through the program and into their culinary career.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meredith Ow. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I got my degree from the University of Pennsylvania. I was a social worker for about 10 years. I worked in the older adult population. And when my grandmother actually became terminally ill, I was taking care of her and taking care of the patients that I was overseeing at that point. After she passed away, she left all of her grandchildren some money. I took my money and went to culinary school because I loved cooking and baking. And during that time, about 9-month program at the Institute of Culinary Education, I read the book Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. And that was basically social work in a restaurant, in my opinion. So I actually never went back to social work officially. And I got a $9 an hour line cook. I gave an amazing interview, with which I was going to try and be a manager. And they were like, no, but you could be a $9 an hour line cook here at Madison Square Park if you'd like. At that point, there were 2 Shake Shacks. It was 2010, April of 2010. I'll celebrate my 10th anniversary with Shake Shack in April, and basically just grew within the program. There's a lot of, as Barbara mentioned, a lot of growth opportunities. If you're able to work hard, the level of progression is super easy. And so that's what kind of started. I was a shift manager after my 3rd month. Moved to the Upper West Side, then to the Upper East Side, where I became a general manager. And I think all the while, my parents always thought that they was going to go back and maybe be a social worker. And I kept on saying, nope, I think it's burgers and fries. I think this is the way I'm going to do this. Or even like, hey, we're going to end up at Gramercy Tavern or someplace else. And I just really loved the Danny Meyer kind of Shake Shack way. Obviously, the CEO is Randy Garudi, was a Cornell grad, and just the thought process of finding people that just truly care and having that culture and that mentorship program that anyone, as long as they care and they can, basically, believe in that hospitality kind of way was super important to me. So, it kept on growing, and thankfully now I oversee 6 Shacks in Manhattan, and now have lots of relationships with different CBOs. That way it doesn't look like my degree of social work was a complete waste of time. I think that my degree actually gives me the opportunity to kind of figure out how to, via burgers and fries, kind of communicate with inner city youth and try and kind of empower them if they don't have that kind of family connection, or that haven't been empowered by, like anyone from home. We're able to kind of try and do that in the Shake Shack setting.
Thank you all very much. Now we're going to get to the meat of some of the questions. And the first one is to talk about the collaboration and the partnership that CBOs have with employers and what that looks like and what are the best practices. What's the ideal partnership? Because very often people might be on different levels. And what is it like if you're a second chance employer? In other words, there are people who have had involvement with the justice system. How do you build trust and empathy for somebody that may have had a background that there isn't a lot of trust and empathy? And also just that collaboration between all 3, the employee, the employer, and the CBO. Some CBOs have a memorandum of understanding so that when employee begins a job, there's an understanding between all 3 parties as to what's expected from each of them. So I'm going to have the panelists talk about their ideal partnerships and also to recognize what it is that maybe they would like to have a little different and some of the things that have worked really well. And I've asked Alex if he would kick that off, please.
Sure. When I think of the ideal partnership between, the business and, the CBO, I think of 3 strong things: investment, communication, and what I'll just call truth in advertising, right? So we definitely really want the business to be very invested in this process. They really need to understand that, what they're getting is somebody who understands that they have a new opportunity. And so they're getting a person that's really committed to kind of bettering their life and becoming a contributing member for their family in a new environment. And in turn, that's going to help them better this business's business. And then understand that they're part of the educational process of the person, in our case, of the graduate of our program. They're a part of their process. They are the first step in a series of steps that's hopefully going to get this person from being an entry level to someday managing or business ownership. And so they really need to be take on wholeheartedly that mentorship part of the process that, that many of us really relish in our organizations. Communication is another really, really big one, right? Clear communication is really, really important. And it starts very, very basic from, the business's standpoint. We really need to have a clear expectation of what their needs are as a business. And then what are their dreams for an employee that they could get, just any employee? What does their dream employee look like? And then set clear expectations from us for our graduate in moving into that business. And then once they get to that business, the business setting clear expectations for their new employee because they've come from a very intense but structured environment in the program that they had just come from. So they need, in those initial steps in their career, that really tight structure to keep them on task and on that path to the next step in their career. They also need to be
No, I just want to ask you one thing as you're going on, because I think it's important that when people say you need good communication, I think very often, and that the employer has to provide some educational process in it, and an employer might think, that's not my job, I'm not a school, is to realize that the workforce, that employers have lost a huge talent pool in the last couple of years because of immigration, and that it's about to creatively look at a new workforce that takes a different kind of attention, and that very often the reason that these organizations, many of them have social workers on staff, is to be able to coach young adults or older adults in what that communication looks like, which is why the life skill is so important. So any reference to the life skill training that is done would also be helpful.
Sure. So on our end, yes, we definitely go into what it's really going to be like for you to enter into the workforce specifically for us, in New York City, but then ultimately in the United States. What are your rights is a very, very big one as a person, first and foremost, but then as somebody who is entering the hourly workforce. So having those expectations and that knowledge of what you can and can't do, and how you need to comport yourself as you go into the business is very important, because it's very, for our student, it's very cultural. There are many things that we take for granted growing up here in the United States that are very, very different from some of the, from the students from some of the countries that, our students come from. Right. So a lot goes into that. I would say, our program breaks down in a, kind of a 2/3 culinary, 1/3 outside of the kitchen. And much of that is, focused on, those skills that pertain to how do I maintain a job after I get my foot into the door.
Right, thank you. And Meredith, seeing that the expectation that you have in regard to the life skills, the communication, the coaching. I mean, here at Cornell, the students get internships, they get jobs, they have orientation, they get a mentor. How does that work at Shake Shack, and how can you see that actually even applying to other employers besides Shake Shack?
I think the super important thing is that the CBO knows what they want and what they expect, what success looks like to them, as well as for Shake Shack. The key thing for Shake Shack is we want someone who wants to work hard and either wants to grow or at least wants to represent the Denny Meyer, way in terms of light and hospitality as best that they can. So if we can try and find common language where everyone can figure out what success is and then feel that there is that overlap, that's super important for us. That means that we'll be successful. I think finding these vulnerable populations or the CBOs where someone needs that second chance, that's the person who we want, who truly is talking it and wants that second chance, but just hasn't been given an opportunity. All too often, some of the youth say these things and don't actually back it up. So for us to be able to kind of find that connection where someone is able to say, oh, okay, this is what you mean, or okay, this is how you spin a shake, or anything like that. We can give you the skills. We just need someone who wants to work. If someone cares, we can take that caring and that passion and take it to the next level. So that's the most important thing that I think on my end.
And ELIZA, you've been working with the high school students for a long time. You see them in action. Where do you see that they have challenges and where they have opportunities in regard to transitioning into the workforce?
Yes, I think for our students, we're a culinary focused public high school, but not every single one of our students knows that they want to be kind of an executive chef in the end, or necessarily knows where they want to go, but they are, a big part of what we teach are those soft skills of, if I could count the amount of times that I say show up on time to the students. But also we talk to them about some of the, coming from the industry, I know some of the challenges as well. We talk to them about sexual harassment and racial harassment. We talk to them about asking for raises and how to get along with your coworkers and what to do in different situations. And so I think I didn't used to teach those things, and the reason that we did, because that's some of the things that came up in the meetings with students of what was happening on the job. So I think when I'm thinking about what makes for a good partnership, kind of in my mind is like, we'll do our job, you do yours. Of as long as we're sending our students into, so like Shake Shack is a great example. We have 3 students there that absolutely love it, and they feel so welcome, and they feel so taken care of, and they feel like they have a path, and they're always talking to me about passing their beverage exam that they can't get past. But I think for employers that care about their employees as well, it's so, it feels so good on our end to be able to send our students in there, because we know our students, we wouldn't send them in if they weren't ready, and some of them will need, education on the job. But I think as long as employers care about that for every single employee that walks in the door, it should be a great partnership. As just basically like we prep them in the way that we can, but we can't fix everything. And we want that to be a successful partner between the employee and the employer directly as well.
So another really important thing in that is definitely going to be feedback, right? Mm-hmm. So there definitely needs to be feedback between the employer and the CBO, because we've had a really intense period of time with their new employee, in which we were really high touch, and that trust has been built. And we can possibly express something to the new employee that maybe the employer might not have the opportunity to, because the new employee might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So definitely by the employee going in with, leading with kindness, sensitivity and understanding really, really helps, because a lot of the reactions that might be happening in those workplace situations by the employee are happening due to stress or even possibly some sort of trauma, and with the understanding that something is happening with this employee and it may not be the employee's fault.
Well, you read my mind. Let me just say this with Alex, is that the importance of having this feedback mechanism, that the CBO and the employer have an understanding, and please pipe in, so that the employee is bookended by people who want that individual to be successful. It's not an ongoing, it's not babysitting someone. It's about providing the support that's needed. And I'd like to hear, I think, ELIZA, you wanted to say something to that effect?
Sure. I mean, I think, so just kind of the story that I was going to tell was we had one student that wanted to work at this restaurant for 2 years, would come to my office, so excited to be a senior so that she could finally work in this restaurant. She got hired at the restaurant and didn't show up to her first day of work. And we have meetings with the students every single week, and the chef called me when she didn't show up and let me know. And so I spoke to the student, and what had happened was that the summer before she was working in a separate job, and her boss tried to kiss her. Her boss gave her beer. Her boss was very inappropriate, and she felt guilty in that because she had taken the beer, because she felt like she couldn't talk to anybody about that. And she went to her trail, and this was an all-male kitchen. And so she didn't realize the trauma that the summer had caused, but that showed up in not showing up the first day of work. And being there to be able to process that with her, that was 2 years ago, and she is still there today, and she is on her way to management. And so without that, I think that just would have been a no call, no show, and a student that may have struggled for a long time, but being able to be there and be kind of that third party that's not their boss, but is their employer, is their kind of supporter, is really crucial. But just one other quick thing is I think I'm a little bit careful in terms of what that communication looks like, because I always want to maintain the trust with the students. So I think it's important that that's kind of like up to us of what we share. We'd love to hear things from the employers, but we're not able to share everything because that's an important relationship.
But it's allowing the employee to know that they have an avenue where they can get support, they can get guidance,
Right.
get mentorship, which is what's so key for the success. And Meredith, where have you found that employees stumble? Where they're most, what are their biggest challenges that you see in them being able to be successful? And also, do you ever ask a CBO to customize their curriculum so that if you know you're going to be a pipeline for a lot of jobs, that you ask them maybe to incorporate something in their curriculum that will help them ease into the job? And the rest of you as well, whether or not you're ever open to customizing if you know that a good portion of your participants are going to be having an opportunity with that company. But Meredith, if you wouldn't mind starting with that.
Absolutely. I think where the ball gets dropped the most is showing up on time. Not so ironically that Eliza just mentioned that story. I think that is the key piece. Someone has, whatever they're having their outside life, that getting to work on time is the hardest thing for them. And I think the supportive counseling is what I call it, to try and at least save some money for my social work degree, and that kind of case management piece. We can then tell, so if like someone from Eliza's school doesn't show up, I can say, hey, like we can send an email real quick and like, hey, Joe Smith didn't show up, just a heads up. And that way then both sides are not just kind of like letting Joe Smith kind of like fall off a cliff. She's gonna check in with Joe Smith, hey, what happened with him? We're also doing the same thing. So I think that is that real key piece, that supportive counseling allows someone not to try and, kind of all of a sudden disappear or not make it. Once they get that hook, once they kind of start to feel that kind of culture, and we can start to build to them their self-esteem, even if they just want this to be a 9 to 5 or 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week, then all of a sudden, once you're kind of in that Shake Shack atmosphere and that culture, it becomes competitive, and there's a bus that just walked in, and oh my God, there's 90 all day, and like that kind of atmosphere. It's hard not to get blown away by that. So I think that's the super important piece, for us to try and not have someone kind of fall off. And then very often there's one role model in the kitchen, someone who's just like this person from the CBO, and they're able to say like, oh wow, this person grew from the beginning, and it's like, oh yeah, he was 3 years ago he was a $15 an hour line cook. Like, wait, what? And so you can really kind of see that light at the end of the tunnel. And in terms of kind of creating that relationship with the CBO, yeah, anytime that I'm starting a new relationship or kind of a new partnership with them, for example, this Tuesday, or actually in the past, Project Renewal, it's a terrific organization in New York City that they're either incarcerated or have mental health, issues. And we've actually I've taken 3 GMs and we've done a workshop with them, talked to 20 people that want to get hired. And we basically tell them about Shake Shack, what it's like, what do we do. We bring them Shake Shack so they can actually have some food while we're talking about it. And then after that, then we spin off into the 3 GMs, then have an interview with people that are that have that interest. They're dressed up, they have their resume. And then after that session, we then give the feedback to the manager or the case manager, whoever the person is from, say, Project Renewal in this case. And we say, hey, we're not going to hire blah, 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 because, they said they really don't actually want to work, or, and I got to give that coaching feedback. So we're trying our best to school and say, hey, this is what a successful Shake Shack employee looks like, and then kind of trying to create that partnership.
So Eliza, I'm going to ask you this. From the employer point of view, what do you find to be the best way that they can create a relationship with the CBO and with the employee? In other words, what can they do if they're looking for workforce? They come to the Food and Finance High School. What do you tell them that you need from them in order for the partnership to be successful?
So I think a few things. One of them would be to treat our students as an employee, because they are employees, they are hired as employees, and I think when they're kind of treated as this special separate case, they feel uncomfortable, they don't feel like they're helping, and they start to kind of drop off. But when they feel like a member of the team of kind of like our 3 kids at Shake Shack, they really start to engage and become that successful part of the team. I think another one would be, as kind of Meredith is talking about, of, some people are just looking for the 9 to 5. We have a ton of people that say to us, like, I want that passionate kid that wants to be the next, executive, next celebrity chef. I don't think they do. I think those kids are great when they come about, but I think the kid that is showing up on time and the kid that is ready and on top of it, and we know those things. We have track records. We have all the kids sign in of when they got there. We know their track records. So I think kind of opening their mind and maybe breaking the model a little bit, because for so long it was these passionate men, honestly, that were working their way up and maybe not getting paid. That's not the way it is anymore. People are having a hard time finding employees. They need to open their mind and open their eyes and understand that we are, yes, they're supporting us, but we're also a resource for them. And so kind of like listening to which students are the most on top of it, who's going to show up on time, who might be a great fit, and yeah, treating them as employees and kind of rewarding them in that way.
Well, I know we're near the 45 minutes kind of sped away. We have a few more minutes. And I really want to take away that we have an audience that's from around the world. The CBOs that are here and the employer that is here are just one small example of incredibly innovative, forward-thinking initiatives that are happening, and that the organizations, the CBOs, don't necessarily have access to the employers. They don't know how to get to the right person in the company to be able to maintain that connection. And so the last thing I'd like the panelists to be able to share is, what do you want the employers to know? And from you, Meredith, the best practices that you have found at Shake Shack, what is it that other employers can be doing so that they don't feel like going into this whole new territory that feels very unfamiliar, and how to make them feel more familiar, more motivated, more encouraged, that the individuals being trained by the CBOs are not just viable, but a pool of talent that has been untapped?
Do you want to go first? It sounds like I was going last.
Oh my God, I left the room. No, get back here. Yes. So Alex, why don't you take it?
Sure. So what do we want employers to know? I guess one of the biggest things is that, employers have a large underrepresented resource that is here and that's ready for change. But like I was saying before, it's gonna take a little bit of investment. So you have to be passionate about whatever route you're going to go, and then put your all into it, because the organization and your new employees, they need the investment, whether it be your time, your knowledge, your resources, or your money. They're all going to really help support and then help grow the industry that we're all sharing right now.
All right, thank you. Eliza, you want to put in a last statement?
Sure. So I'm kind of thinking about the title of the panel of the win-win-win. And I think what I would say is, for employers, you need good people and you need solid people that are going to be loyal. Our students need jobs, and we want to do our part to level the playing field in the cities we work in. So kind of, as Alex was saying, of investing in our programs is not only kind of good for your business, but it's good for the city of New York, but also promote our people. Don't just hire them for entry-level jobs.
Thank you. And Meredith, any words that you would like to share with other employers as to how this all can really work well?
I think one of the ways that it really works well is if it's whatever you signed on for on March, say March 18th, I'm starting up a new CBO, and I'm going to give them a tour of 2 shacks and tell them from the GM's mind what's a great employee. What looks like on March 18th might not be on May 18th, and always being willing to have that kind of communication and saying, if one of the sides doesn't, like whether it's the Shake Shack or whether it's the CBO, if something doesn't feel right any longer, or we're not going down the right path, to actually start that conversation. So that way all of a sudden it just doesn't go from hiring 10 people a year to no one, right? And really kind of saying like, hey, like, I don't know if we're, doing, like, are we giving you the wrong candidates? What's going on here? And really having that thoughtful conversation, because I don't want to waste the CBO's time, and I really need people that just want to work. So trying to find that common ground, and I think that's super important, because no one wants to waste anyone's time. No one wants to increase the turnover rate or anything like that, because it's just not cost effective, and it also doesn't change or impact people's lives.
So if employers are wondering how you get involved, you can look in your own neighborhood and look at workforce initiatives, and I guarantee you that there are CBOs that are available who are looking to connect with the right people, whether it's restaurants, hotels, food retail. As you know, hospitality is huge. And even though right now we've got this enormous challenge with coronavirus, and that again, you can look at things as being a challenge or an opportunity, and the things that you can control, this is something that we all can control. This is something that we all have a place in being able to have positive change by connecting with the CBOs, the workforce initiatives, talking to one another to find out how this best works, and to be able to take the words from the panelists themselves as to how it can best work. And HEC 95 is Dare to Do. And may I say, these panelists dare to do, the students here that made this theme, they dare to do, and we're hoping that you dare to do as well. So thank you to our panelists, and thank you for listening.
Yeah.